Welcome folks. Today we're going to continue on with the rebuild. Today we're going to be addressing the underside of the air horn, or the top casting, call it what you will. Alright, for starters, let's mention a thing about safety or two. Even though this part of the assembly sequence probably won't be too dangerous, it's still a good idea to wear some safety glasses, and just in case some small parts or something you know, kind of jumps around and heads for your eyes, you want to protect them at all costs. Okay, now to start with, in some previous videos I was mentioning to protect these air bleed tubes here on the underside here for the secondary jets, always keep these in place. Just a reminder, but what we're going to do today is the final assembly, so for the underside of this air horn. So don't forget, for the very first thing I'm going to show you here is just to make sure that these are tight. Okay, 5/16 open end wrench will take care of it. There's some flats on halfway down the jet. You just snug them up. Remember, always remember the size of the screw or thread that you're dealing with. You know, you have to use the appropriate force, only just a couple of foot-pounds, and just snug them up. You don't want to overdo it, especially if you're a bodybuilder or something. Just go easy. So you just have to get it till it basically stops and it's snug. You don't have to go any further than that, because you start stripping threads and then you've just ruined it. So go easy on those small parts. So these are both tight. That's the first thing you have to do. You don't want them rattling around in there, because what will happen is you'll get an air leak where the threads are, and it could mess up the calibration on that. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, you can actually do this later, but the reason I'm doing this now is I'm going to install this the nut where the fuel line goes into the fuel inlet at the bottom of the back of the carb rather. I'll just flip it over to show you what it looks like. And it goes right in there to the lower part of your screen there. And I'm putting that on now because it's going to help you hold this in the vise to help me out with showing you on the video to angle this thing upwards when we get a little further along. So there's a washer here. I believe it's aluminum. I put a magnet on it. And use the one, there's probably one in the kit. Just make sure you save your old one in case there isn't. So basically just put the washer on there. It's always a good idea to put a drop of oil or some anti-seize compound or even grease on these threads when you install them. Just in case you ever want to get it out again, then you won't have the thing all corroded up on you and everything. So all it takes is a 3/4 inch box wrench. Your typical combination wrench. Use the fully enclosed end there for it. I'm going to just hold it up here just so it doesn't start rattling around on the bench. You can do it any way you like. Just don't start banging around with the parts on top or bottom of this air horn here. So just snug it up. You don't have to really lean into it, just as long as it's nice and tight, but not overly tight. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is install the accelerator pump assembly. Got a few tricks to show you here as well. For starters, I'm just going to be using old parts, by the way. This is a $25 spare parts card that I'm using in this video series that we're doing here. So there's a spring, and you'll be getting a new accelerator pump plunger, or at least, very least, the seal cup that goes on your old one. So all you have to do is remember to put the small end of the spring. It's a tapered spring, and you have to put the small end on towards the piston cup like so. But to actually assemble this thing, the easiest way to do is the way I've got it here, is drop the big end of that spring down inside the cylinder, the accelerator pump cylinder. And then you take your accelerator pump stem and you push it down in there like so. You invert the carb, or sideways. I can do it for the video. You can either put, excuse me, put anything at all in there, but you can use the S-link here. And I'll show you a way so you don't lose this thing. You just basically insert it in the hole there. And then you have to, in order for this not to jump out and lose it, I found that if you spin this thing around so that the S-link here is actually pointing towards the recess in the casting there. You got to push it all the way in and then give it a spin without pushing the S-link. It's a little hard to do sometimes when you're making a video, but there, you can see what I've done there. The S-link, I'll try to get the lighting on it. It's actually pointing, so if I tried to push this out of the hole in the accelerator pump stem, it would just stop up against the casting there. That way you won't lose your S-link. And on final assembly, when we put the the lever to actuate that, then we'll spin this around and put it in the correct position, and I'll show you that later. But this is just so you don't use that lose the S-link rather. And it holds the piston, accelerator pump piston and stem all in there while you put the next thing on. And that'll be your accelerator pump check valve. This is a better style, the newer style. It's machined out of solid brass, and it's got a little steel ball bearing in there. When you get yours, just make sure you can poke something small in there. Make sure that the little ball bearing, the steel ball bearing in there, is free. Make sure it's not stuck as a result of a manufacturing defect. Otherwise your pump won't work properly. There's a couple of ways you can do this. You can use a scrap piece of wood and a regular hammer, or what I'm going to show you today is I'm going to use a rubber mallet. I'll just get that and get this thing held. You can either shore this thing up on the upside down. You can put blocks of wood, anything you got, scraps, or you can do it like I'm going to do. I'm just going to hold it freehand. And the trick to assembling anything where it's a press fit, it's a small interference fit, and I'll show you, like when you try to insert something like that, don't just pound on one side if it's angled over. Like if it's cocked to one side there, don't be hitting the low side. Always hit the high side and try to even it out and go around as you do. But when you first start that in there, make sure that it's as square as possible. And then, like I'm going to do here, is never hit the middle of this thing, because that's where the working part of this is, with a ball bearing. So you can do it with a soft-faced hammer and just tap it lightly on around the outside there, and just keep working it around and look for the high spot and hit it. And just go gradually. Just keep tapping it around and around and around until it's fully seated. Just remember not to hit the middle of it, just on the outside. You don't have to go crazy on it, and just till it seats all the way down. If you want to, you can also get that piece of wood to make sure that you're all the way down, but this actually works quite well. You just don't have to go crazy on it. Just go nice and easy and keep going around in circles like this as you're tapping. And make sure you don't hit anything else there. You have to be careful that you don't start hitting the secondary jet. So there you go, it's all the way in there. It's all the way down. You look around there and make sure that it's fully seated down around the cylinder for the accelerator pump. So that's in. You could actually take this S-link out right now and store it in a safe place, or you can leave it as I've done there. Just make sure if you leave it in here that you don't get too close to the edge of your bench, or you might lose this thing. Don't do that. Like I say, you can take this out now, spin it, take it out and put it in a little parts container, or you can leave it here like I'm going to do. Okay, so there's that part of it. Okay, now with that said, we can move on to installing, I've already installed one, and it's the needle and seat assembly. It's just the seat portion of it, the cylindrical shaped part. It's made out of brass. You got to watch, there's a little steel washer in there that has to be inserted before you put the seat in there. And there's two of them, one on either side. I left one out to show you. And now what I've got here, the reason I put that fuel inlet nut there is so I could get this thing set up, and so that you could see. Just give me a minute here and I'll set this up so that we got 3 hockey pucks here to help us out too. Okay, I'm just going to set that down like so, prop it up, and then I have to lock this thing up so it doesn't decide to jump out on me. Alrighty, I'll center that up now so you can see it. Add some additional lighting since we're in the smaller area. Just got to try to center that for you. I think that's about in the middle of the video now. Alright, so you can see right down in there, there's a threaded hole, and then there's a shoulder machined in there. And what you have to put in there is a tiny little steel washer. And there's the seat with a thread on it. What you'll find too, what I've noticed, is if you try to put the steel washer on the seat first, it's not going to work for you. What will happen is the internal threads here will grab this washer because it sticks out further on the diameter than this threaded seat, and it'll grab on those threads and it'll kind of fold over on you. And when you tighten this, you'll probably end up bending the steel washer. So the best advice I can give you that works for me is drop that in the hole. That's the washer that we're putting in there now. And what I've got here is a short bit of bamboo skewer, and not the pointy end, just two flat ends. And just take the flat end and work that thing around down in there until it's seated down in its bore, in the counter bore where the shoulder is. And what I'm doing is I'm tapping, taking this little stick and tapping down all the way around the outside diameter of that steel washer. Now I have to be careful and make sure that it's all the way down, because you don't want that thing not fully seated, because what will happen when you screw the seat from the needle and seat assembly in there, it'll bend the steel washer over and you'll have a leak. So I can see that that's down there, all the way down in there. So now we can just go ahead and put the seat in. It, for the most part, will they're kind of concentric. That steel washer fits pretty good on the outside diameter inside the casting, so it's not going to move around very much once you got it poked down flat. You can use anything, just don't use anything that's sharp that might scratch it. So I just got a big screwdriver here going across both flats. Now I'm down. So all I have to do is snug it down now. And so we're across both the flats with the screwdriver. And like I say, just take a look at the size of the thread that you're tightening and use the appropriate torque. Just a snugging, and when you feel it starting to give resistance, that's the time you stop. Just a couple of foot-pounds, not much. So that's the seat in. I've already done the one on the other side here. So that's that. I'm going to leave the floats to the next video because I got quite a bit to tell you about that. So what I'm going to do is take this out now. And there's only a couple more things in this video that we have to address now. Okay, we're not playing hockey anymore, it's time to put the pucks away. Okay then, so like I was saying, there's only a few little things to do here. The next thing you do once you've secured everything, you've got your accelerator pump all assembled and you got your check valve in. Don't forget to do up those secondary jets. You've got both seats for the needle and seat assembly with their steel washers tightened down in there. Okay, so next thing you do is you get your matching gasket. Take your old one, always keep your old ones matched up with a new one. I'm just going to use an old one for today, this is demonstration only. And like I was mentioning in the other video, rebuild kits usually have several gaskets for different models of thermoquads. So you have to get the gasket that matches 100% with your old gasket. Like I say, providing the last guy that may have rebuilt it used the right one. But have a look around and make sure it's covering the appropriate places and that the holes or openings in the gasket allow everything else to, the passageways in the float bowl, top of the float bowl and this to make their connections without being stopped up by the wrong gasket. So in order to install these, first thing you do is automatic transmission fluid actually works quite well. And since most people out there have automatic transmissions, I'll bet you they got some automatic transmission fluid in a bottle or container of some kind. You can wear some rubber gloves or anything you like if you don't want to get it on your skin. And just a light film on both sides of the gasket, and that'll keep it from sticking on you. When you want to get this apart, you're going to have to take the top off if you want to make any adjustments, any jet changes, or change the float level. So now this is coated. Theoretically, it's supposed to be coated with something. You could use Vaseline, you could use anything that's oily. But automatic transmission fluid is quite good because it doesn't really react too much with rubber parts as does motor oil. So you'll notice here there's an extra cutout here. Well, that's for the accelerator pump cylinder there. So you have to orient this, get that in line with so. Excuse me. First thing you want to do is lower the gasket just and tuck it underneath this fitting that's sticking out of the accelerator pump cylinder housing there. So straight down, line it all up. And you might have to bend the gasket a bit, just don't kink it, just a nice gentle bend. You have to get underneath that fitting first there. I'll just try to center it up just a little bit more there. Okay, so you've got it tucked under the fittings there, so you want to go straight down with the gasket. You don't want to angle it anyway, you want to go straight down. Okay, this one's making it too easy because it's enlarged and old. You drop it straight down, in a lot of cases you'll have it hang up on the other fitting that's in the that leads to the accelerator pump squirters. So you just want to get down there and work it underneath there, and from that point on there's no resistance at all. But usually there's two bosses from this air horn and they have to line up with the holes that's in the gasket there. So you just tap the gasket all the way down, make sure it's flat everywhere, and you're pretty much good to go. So there's only one remaining thing. Once you're satisfied that the gasket's all in place and those other things I'd mentioned are all tightened up, and then this is a very important part as far as accelerating with your vehicle, and it's the little plastic hose. They usually give you a new one. It's this one's a clear one, first one I've seen. Most I think are black in color and you can't see through them, but this one has got a lot of crud in it. I don't know if it's going to show up, but this is the one that came on this carburetor. I'm just using it for a demonstration. So the gasket's on, that's the first thing you got to do, and then you install this. Now you have to be very careful that you don't kink this, because if you cause a restriction by kinking this little plastic connector hose, that's going to limit the amount of gasoline that gets pumped from the accelerator pump cylinder into the fitting that goes to your accelerator pump squirters. So be very careful when you install, as it looks like just a 5-cent part, if that, but this is a very important aspect of how these things are, how well they're going to run rather. So just basically, I like to start with the top one. You can do what you like, but if there's already a pre-curve in the hose, turn it towards the other fitting as close as you can get it. Like, you don't want to really have it curving up and then bend it the opposite way. So if it comes with a curve in the rebuild kit, align the curve so that it's a natural kind of a flow without having any extra bending going on with that little plastic hose. So the other thing you have to do is put the other end on, but be very gentle. Try to support the thing wherever you're bending it. Like, don't just grab a handful and yank it back, because if you put a kink in this, you're also restricting the amount of fuel that can be pumped from, like I say, from the cylinder to this fitting here. So just support it the best you can, go slow, and then put it on there. They're already pre-cut to length, so there's no need to modify it unless they made a mistake or didn't do it. But just make sure that they're a nice tight fit on both of those fittings there. Push them all the way as far as they will go. And that's as simple as it is for this part of this assembly of the underside of the air horn or top casting. So I'm going to kind of end there, because like I say, I got a lot to talk about in the next video with the floats and things are going on with today's fuels as compared to when these were calibrated for the old gasoline of the 70s, so to speak. So you can review this video. It's very simple what I've shown you here today. Like I say, with this fuel inlet nut, the only real reason I did that right now is to help us, so I could clamp that in a vise to aim this thing, so I could show you how that seat was installed in the threaded portion of this air horn here. So like I say, you can add that in. You can even add that when it's on the car. But as far as this internal stuff here, it's more or less all got to be done. Like, the only thing remaining now is to install the needles inside the seats, and then get the float levels, the float pins and the floats in, and then set the level for you. So that's today's video, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care. Have a nice day, and bye for now.